Hi, welcome to XReality Podcast. I'm the host, Dominic Wu, and beside me is my guest, Vicki Dobbs Beck. Hi, Vicki. Could you share a little bit about your background with us?
Sure. I spent 34 years at Lucasfilm and recently retired. It was an incredible run, and I feel really privileged to have had that experience. It ranged. There was a huge range over those 34 years. But I think the thing that it was in common was always trying to catalyze innovation. And for the last 10 years, I helped co-found what was called ILM X Lab. It was Lucasfilm's immersive storytelling studio, and then I ran it for 10 years. It was really the highlight, or one of two highlights, actually, of my career. But our goal was to use emerging technologies like VR, AR, XR, etc., to invite people to step inside our stories in ways that had not previously been possible. So now in retirement, I am actually serving on a few advisory boards and continue to be really interested in immersive entertainment broadly, transmedia, and really the role of AI and the creator economy in the future of entertainment.
Wow. This experience will definitely help our audience who is, for example, like creators, designer, developers, or recent graduate from college students. They will be very excited to learn like all the experience and what's your journey of being where you are today?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey. I went to Stanford Business School, and when I graduated, well, at the time that I went, the vast majority, I would say, 95% of my fellow students went into either investment banking or management consulting. And my goal was really to work for a company whose product was inherently creative. I didn't set out to be in the film industry, per se. Film was certainly one of the things I looked at. I looked at, performing arts, wine, fashion. Um, I really talked to a lot of different people and, eventually landed at, Lucasfilm, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I had. But like I said, many people start out, very intentionally going into the film business, for example, and that was not my career. Once I was at Lucasfilm, I had a lot of really interesting opportunities, and uh, I would say that sort of the defining element in my career has been to be opportunistic, um, to see the potential to disrupt, and to innovate. And that took a lot of different forms over the years. Like I said, it ended with founding and co-founding and running ILMX Lab, um, which was really, for me, it was like running a small business. I was more of an entrepreneur, and I really loved that. I loved that it was creative, that it was strategic, that I was running a team, um, and that we created experiences that really had an impact on people, including Carne and Vader Immortal, What If an Immersive Story. I mean, those were definitely highlights.
Wow. So, what do you see, for example, like all those kind of like the big IP types of movie and turn into more like immersive experience? Like what do you see like the production wise? How do you transfer that, for example, from previously online? You mentioned like in your previous interviews, you mentioned that storytelling and shift to story living. So what do you see the entire transition from all those, like a movie switch to more like immersive experience?
Yeah, I think that the key is developing the right story for the right platform and leaning into the platform's strengths. So when we became aware of VR and started experimenting with it, we recognized pretty quickly that this was an opportunity to put fans in Star Wars. And so we had to think about it with that in mind. Like, Star Wars already had it was an incredibly rich universe with very compelling characters. There was a master narrative, the Skywalker saga, and all those things combined really allowed us to transition from, storytelling, which is essentially one-way communication, a movie, very powerful storytelling, but to what I think is a bigger idea of story living, where you put people in a world where they make meaningful choices that drive the narrative forward. And because virtual reality did that naturally, allowed us to put people in a world, and because we were developing in real time, it was interactive. People could actually interact with the environment and with the characters. And so we took advantage of all of the richness associated with the IP, but we were very intentional about how and where we applied it so that we could take advantage of the strengths of VR.
Wow. So, for example, like I remember a long time ago, probably around COVID time or during COVID time, I went with my friend to a escape room, and which is Star Wars, right? And I remember when I saw the Vader, right, the evil one. He is right in front of me, and even though in my brain I told myself this is fake, I'm in VR, right? I'm in the escape room. I keep telling myself, but I couldn't help. My legs are trembling even though my brain kept telling me it's just so real, right? He's just in front of you. And in my brain, there's a conflict. It's like one is that telling me this is fake. Don't believe what you see. That is more rational. The other one is like, oh my God, I'm going to die because it's so real, right? So I was very impressed by that types of experience because usually for more like the VR, because I think a full body experience in escape room while we wear, the suit and then the full, all, full immersion versus more like a meta quest I play at home. I can easily feel like, oh, this is fake, right? But for those like a super professional equipment in the room where you can even walk around, like everything feels so real. Your brain start having like some conflicts, like, oh, I'm going to die. And I feel like my legs almost like falling apart and I almost like a fainting, right? It's like, I'm going to die. But a part of my brain tell me that this is fake. I'm in the escape room. Don't believe what you see. So yeah, I do really think this types of like story living is really like make you feel like trigger all your senses. Even though I during that time I have a very reasonable brain, but I feel like my emotion is overwhelming my reasonable brain. Yeah.
That was actually one of my favorite experiences that you're talking about Star Wars Secrets of the Empire that we did with The Void.
Yes.
And The Void called it hyper reality. And you're hitting on a lot of the elements of it, which is um, what i- what you saw in the virtual world. Like, if you saw a wall in the virtual world, you reached out, there was actually a physical wall there. And that one-to-one mapping caused your brain to really buy into the reality. The second thing was, you were with friends, right? Or
Yes.
with other people. It was an experience that you could do with up to, 3 others, so 4 people. And there was something about that shared experience that was also, really, really impactful, and so what was interesting about it is, um, there was definitely a story, there was an adventure and experience, but when people came out of that, what they talked about was what they experienced individually, what they experienced um, as a little team, and I think that was part of why it was sort of transcendent for a lot of people. And there were some really amazing experiences um, that came as a result of that. So, for example, early in the run of Secrets of the Empire, there was a group of four young women that came in. Um, One of them was in a wheelchair,
Mhm.
and so once they put on the headset, they all looked like stormtroopers, right?
Yes.
And they were moving together through the experience. And when she came out of the experience, she was actually crying, and the obviously the staff was concerned. Are you okay? And she said, no, you don't understand. This is the I was able to, for the first time, walk with my friends. I may have been a stormtrooper,
Oh.
but I could walk with my friends, and it was so impactful for her, and then obviously for everybody that was around her. But I had many of those kinds of experience, or heard of many of those kinds of experiences over the years. And the one thing I would say about what I loved about immersive entertainment in general is that every opportunity has its place, right? Location-based entertainment, as you point out, is extremely impactful because you control 100% of the environment, right? You can introduce 4D effects, so heat and smells, and you're with other people in a physical setting. So it was very high impact. Whereas when you're in a Quest headset, for example, at home, y- we had the opportunity for extended engagement, extended storytelling. So instead of it being 20 minutes or 30 minutes, it could be an hour or more. And so you just design to the strengths and make sure that you're leveraging every creative opportunity that the platform provides you with.
Wow. Yeah. So I do think that, for example, like a film, right? Films, even though it's like a big screen, you still can see, for example, your popcorn, right? And or like people around you talking, right? That immersion already like a before VR or that immersion is already pretty good. But when you wear the VR headset, it's like extended, right? You extend and you look around, it's cover everything. So it's more immersive. And with a location base and with other people. For example, it's very hard to, you have your reasonable brand to keep telling you this is fake. But while you have your friend, and that is kind of partially true, but your friends wearing all the equipment walking with you and whatever you touch, right? For example, like I remember, uh, bring a brick or walk, having a gun or something.
Yep.
Everything feels so real. Whatever you see, and your entire sensors is all there, right? And also, when the I don't know elevator, right? Uh, start shaking, or there's a bullet hitting you, and you feel vibrant. It's just so hard to tell yourself it's not true. It's just so true. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, people really felt like, we heard over and over again people saying, I felt like I was in Star Wars. And that was the goal.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. So, what do you see, for example, like, we all know that types of storytelling was much, much engaging. And what do you see kind of the challenging for translating from more 2D uh, screen based into a 360? And especially, for example, like I remember I get into the room, right? The room and with my friends. But how can you extend like magically? I interviewed Curtis, who is also the
Yep.
lead for co-founder for The Void, right? Yeah. So he recently, yeah, like few years ago, he published a book that is talking about all the magic, right? Because he really likes magic. how can you turn that small area into infinite world? And also every time when you touch, it's all the real things. I don't know how you map that the square room into imaginary world that if in the headset you feel infinite, but actually in your reasonable brain, you are in a confined square room. How do you guys do that?
Well, honestly, Curtis Hickman is quite a visionary, and he also, as you say, he's a magician. So he really leaned into illusion. He understood what it took to have people believe, to believe something, to believe that they were there, or that they were, going down an elevator, or that they were going down a stairway, even if they weren't in fact doing that. And that's an art form unto itself. So that was a great creative collaboration with Curtis and the Void, but Curtis in particular, just because of his uh, knowledge of
Yeah.
illusion and his ability to translate that into something that we could experience. And then, the physical nature of it is was I think the real strength of the Void. Um, w and I a lot of the new location based is, more free roam. So it's like an open space, and even though you have a sense, to your point about, like, huge areas, even if they're not as large as they appear to be, you don't have that one-to-one mapping. You don't feel like you're I think in Secrets of the Empire, for example, you felt like you were going from, one location to another, from one room to another, whereas in free roam, it's a little bit more it's happening in the environment that's been created around you. Um, so, again, I think that some of what you're describing was really what was special, about the Void, and, I keep hoping personally that they will, reappear in some
Yep.
form at some point, because I really my for me, one of the most special moments was, I took my family was down in Southern California for graduation, and so I took, um, 8 people, including my parents, my, aunt and her partner, my nieces and nephews, my husband. None of them had actually done VR before, and so I split them into 2 groups of 4, so they could go through Secrets of the Empire, and when they came out, like and so imagine now we have 8 people between the ages of about 20 and 80, and, all of them, every single one of them was just absolutely blown away by the experience, and they came back, and my dad still asks about it to this day. That was probably 5 years ago. He's like, "Is that still around?" And, unfortunately, it was very bad timing with COVID, but, I it was one of those moments where, like, my family, could actually see what I was involved in helping, come to life, and they loved it, and I think it shows that VR, especially location-based VR, can span many generations. It's not just a gamer, um device, and it even doesn't even require that someone is enjoys playing games, right? It just requires somebody to be interested in being in a world and being in an adventure.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree because every time when I get in VR, I always feels a refreshing of the real world. Because, for example, after watching the movie, right? Yesterday I watched like the movie, go to movie theater and watch Disclosure, and I was like, because maybe because long time ago, when I watch movies and I feel like wow, everything's so big, so immersed, But after I try all the more advanced, for example, like the Void, right, and also my VR headset, I start going back to movie theater. I start feeling less immersion, which is interesting. But I think the good thing about immerse into a story is that you forgot whatever, for example, like in real world, we are worried this, we are worried that. But after getting it, you feel refreshed. And it changed all your perception of the world. It's very fast. It's just you get in and you are another different beings and have another different quest. And then
Yep.
after you take out headset, you feel like the world you see is very different.
It's pretty, I mean, that whole thing about taking off the headset, and it's so jarring when you've been in a different world and then you take the headset off and you're back in your real world. That the thing I had an interesting experience. We did a experiment with Magic Leap. It was called Project Org, and it was really exploring what is it like to have virtual characters in your world, right? And so we designed it because we were also interested in like this idea that a story or an experience isn't bound to 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 2 hours. It could extend over days or weeks or months. And that, really the story, if you will, is your unfolding relationship with the character. So we designed this experiment in 10-minute segments. There were 7 10-minute segments. It was a little over an hour. And right before we were going to release it at LeapCon, uh, I I did all 7 of the experiences one after another. So I was in the headset for, a little over an hour. And what I wasn't prepared for with augmented reality is that when I took the glasses off, um, I was still obviously in my world, um, but the characters were gone. And I felt this incredible sense of loss because, I had developed a relationship with them literally over the course of the previous hour. And, so it really, um, confirmed for me that, you know, VR, we often talk about its strengths are power of presence and power of connection. But the same thing is true of AR with a sort of different slant on it, because you still have that power of connection and also that power of presence is just now in your world. So those are the kinds of like learning experiences that were so memorable over the course of the time that we were doing that development.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree because I find out that, for example, recently I download the manifesto, like teaching you how to conduct, right? And then it's like it's so cool because it directly teleport you into a stage where all your director look like a Mozart, right? It's like very interesting, and every time when you do your conductor, the magic one, right? And then you can have like some after effects and there's like it's very interesting that you are on the stage and everybody you got a team and you need to conduct, right? And I just feel like wow, that is such a smart and magic experience that makes me feels like when I took it off, I I usually tell people that my brain is not really advanced. So every time when I get into the VR space, probably the maximum I can get in without feeling dizzy was 40 minutes. But because the immersion is so good, was so good for that game, I did like 2 hours straight without without even want to take out the headset because it's just like keep teaching you and keep having a lot of interesting song unlock, right? And you just feel like, wow, I want more, I want more. So I feel like that types of experience was premium. Yeah.
That's a great one. I'll have to check it out. What I love about it is it again is leaning into the strength of the device because you are able to interact and you are literally driving the experience, but with your actions. But you also have, then you're responsible for the results, right? Which is, so you're directing an orchestra, and the music is the result. So that's super cool. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And also about the audio experience, right? What do you see, for example, like we all know that in film, the video is, even though, they said like 360, but that the video is more flat. For the game, right, in VR, as far as I know, I saw some, game developer are working on. It's like you put your sound resource in different spatial sound and trying to mixing the sound, sometimes here, sometimes there. So what do you like? What's the sound experience from 2D and transfer into 3D for people to feel they are really there?
Yeah, I think that the key is spatial audio, right? The audio needs to feel, because you are now in a 360-degree space. The audio needs to feel like it's coming from the appropriate place. For example, if someone was walking behind you, the footsteps should really, seem as if they're behind you. Um, you had said something about the power of audio, and I 100% agree with you. And I would say the audio may be even more important than visuals in immersive experiences. So that means a couple of things. One is that you have to take it seriously. It's not an afterthought. It's not. It is really considered from the get go, and the precision of the spatial audio is really important. I did an experience. There's a company called Darkfield in London, and they do fully immersive audio experiences in shipping containers, and it's pitch black. So there's literally no visuals. And and so it's even more important that the sounds are coming from um, where you would expect them to come from. So for example, it felt like someone was on my shoulder whispering in my ear from behind. Creepy. And it gets pitch black. But that was really well executed, audio only immersive experience. And for me, when we were doing Vader Immortal, we actually went through a very interesting um, evolution there, because when we first started out, I think we were approaching it a little bit more like one would approach a film. And we thought about the story unfolding around you, but that you were sort of a ghost, almost an observer of the story. And about, a year or more into it, we realized we really weren't taking full advantage. We weren't playing to the strengths of VR. And we switched it, and we said, okay, this is not the story of Vader. This is your story. And your unfolding relationship with Vader is the journey. But in order to kind of make that switch, we had to convince ourselves that you could actually have a meaningful connection with Vader. So we did a test, and the test is actually in the final product in a slightly different form. But it was this: you were in a cell in a chair, and in the distance, the door opens and Vader appears.
Yes, that thing was so shocking. That thing was the one that makes my brain keep telling me I'm going to die.
Yeah, no, it's true. And if you really think about it, what is it that makes it so terrifying? Well, some of it is the visual, right? Because, the presence of Vader. But a lot of it are the heavy footfalls, that deep Vader breathing. That was the thing that just like gave you chills. And in the original test, David S. Goyer, who was the writer and executive producer of that experience, he wrote some dialogue. And so Vader gets right up to you. He looks into your eyes, which we can do because, we're eye tracking. And he said something. And, we put a bunch of people in the headset to see if this was working, and almost no one heard the dialogue
Mm.
because they were so overwhelmed by his
Yeah.
presence, by the sound, by everything that made him feel so real and right there in front of you that it was, I think, too overwhelming. So in the end, we actually paused quite a bit before he delivered his dialogue because we wanted to give people the time and the space to absorb him. But
Yeah.
anyway, that test not only I think underscores the importance of audio, but it also reconfirmed for us that you could actually establish a meaningful relationship with a character in VR.
Yeah, because VR is more like a first person, right?
Yeah,
Kind of like a immersion, first person narratives. So
that's right.
the thing about film is more like, oh, we are looking or enjoy the perspective of the film director, right? Because it's being cropped. But VR, there is no cropping area, so it's more like a personal. Everybody's VR experience, even though in the same like a Vader, right? The game, everybody's perspective can be different because it's a
That's right.
same open world, right? So I do think that VR and especially co-present with your friends, everybody's friends is different, and every situation is different. I remember during that game, the Vader that game. I remember my friend and we were waiting because there's no trigger on trigger enter. Because I am also a developer, so I know that, oh, there was a time that everything was silent. And my friend just said that, what should we do? And then suddenly I hear there's a sound, the trigger for the gun shoot. And I was like, oh, this is the trigger. So we just pull the trigger. So this is also the sound cue, right? It's like, oh, because sometimes it's it's very hard to kind of like, and we don't want there's a UI in front of you and say, hey, trigger your gun, right? That's destroy the immersion. But I do like the sound cue that remind the player because sometimes player doesn't know what to do, and
Right.
everybody thinks differently, right? I remember there was one time that we didn't know what to do, and then I hear the far away there's a kind of like gun shoot, and we just realized, oh, pull the trigger, and then the story unfold. So yeah, so I think that those like audio cue, helping users not unstuck in the game is also a very interesting way to do the audio experience.
Yeah, I think, Carne Arena was a really good example of kind of this whole topic area because, it was, directed, as you know, by Alejandro Inarritu and, um, who is an, incredible Academy Award-winning, film director. But he was really intrigued with what you could do with VR that you couldn't do with film. And that was to um, put you into a scene, literally, and that scene is unfolding around you. But at the same time, you're right, because he was used to directing um, what the viewer would see. And in this case, he had created a world and an unfolding story, but he couldn't control where people looked. And he very effectively used cues, like you said, audio, lighting, eye tracking, things like that. But you still can't completely control it. And in a way, I think he and we believed that ultimately that was the beauty of the experience is that he had created the master narrative, what was happening in that space. But you that you had your personal narrative within that space, which is where you chose to go, who you chose to, what you saw as a result. And it really impacted, therefore, what the memories that were created by that experience.
Yeah, I think the audio is pretty much, I would say, for a lot of, I don't know, like movies is usually done at the end, right? The composer needs to look at the footage and start having some music in the head, right? And start composing and do sound effects. But I think for VR, there are a lot of things you couldn't control and can use music, right? To start, for example, I remember for the like Stranger Things for VR, right? Uh, yeah, there are a couple of tunnels you need to choose, but if there's a tunnel, there's a sound comes through the end of the tunnel. Probably that is the way to go without having too many UI, because I feel like UI is very artificial. It's like unless you have no idea what to do, you put a UI and tell the sir. Otherwise, you use like a little cue, right? The like a triple A premium game. In the game world, they are trying to eliminate all the UI stuff. So I think, yeah. So yeah, for the VR, especially in the real world, yeah, there's not many, UI in front of you. So yeah, that's the experience is that, for example, something really hidden like a light, like a vibration, or like a sound. So those are all really helping the user to know what's next for the main kind of like a storyline.
I think that kind of gets at one of the things that I loved about producing immersive experiences is that it is definitely, it takes a village, right? It takes a whole team. And you bring people with different expertise. So, ILM certainly had the expertise in the visual and special effects world. We augmented that with really talented, experienced designers, gameplay engineers, etc. And then we had a specialized team from Skywalker Sound. We called them Skylab, but it was a little team whose specific expertise was on spatial audio. And I think it's because having all of those different talents constantly working together and iterating, that's what makes a really impactful experience. Unlike a film, which is a little bit more of a linear process, I think that immersive experience development is much more iterative.
Mm. Yes, yes. And also, you mentioned that the team work together, right? I really miss the time, like a big team work together. And as far as I know in Hollywood, because of AI, right? AI film and also AI. What do you see that AI brings the impact? Because, for example, right now there's Suno. I use Suno to do a lot of my video thing. But the thing about it is that for a composer who really can edit Suno's final outcome, that I'm very admire, because sometimes I will be more like every time when I come up with like the AI film or like the sound or the background music, every time I wish it can be longer or shorter, because the video cut is like that. But the professional composer, they can just see the pattern and extend it or shorten it to the right amount. And for me, I will be more like, okay, then I edit the visual and make it longer. So I do see, like, what do you see more like the AI impact in the film or VR? Uh,
Yeah,
this.
I really I really believe in human-centered AI. So I believe that it requires a human being with a creative vision to use it most effectively. Um, and I we've we haven't talked too much about this transition from storytelling to story living, but part of story living is really about having a rich world that can continually evolve and that can actually change based on the actions of the visitors to that world. The thing that I am excited about for AI is I believe it's going to allow us to do things we can't currently do, much more much less about replacing, but more about expanding the opportunities. And so that's what I look forward to. Obviously, the other, advantage is that much smaller teams of people can leverage AI and uh, create experiences that they couldn't have done before, right? It would have just taken many more people, etc. But again, I think if it does require a creative visionary at the center, and I'm really excited to see how this can enable story living to expand and evolve over time.
Yeah, because I think right now you see LLM, right? Right now we are using large language model. But I would say that I remember one time listening to Owen podcast. Uh, uh, the host mentioned that, oh, the all the data online was scrapped, was being totally fully used by the LLM. Right now, there's no additional data, so a lot of companies need to hire experts to start, generate or create more data for specific field training. And right now, I think the blue ocean area will be spatial, right? Spatial intelligent world model, right? And world model is also, I would say right now I'm using a lot of 3D tools, AI tools to create 3D prompts, right? Like triple, meshy, Huion, all those like things to create more like development tools. Before, it might take a team or a person with like a 10 years of experience just to do
Yeah.
the modeling, character design. But right now you can use Nano Banana or OpenAI, ChatGPT to create some types of character sheet and import into those like 3D models. Even though there are still not perfect, but it's good enough to do the first iteration. So I do see the AI really speed up the development.
Yeah.
And I do see that the difference is the taste. For example, there are so many tools and a lot of tools are free for, a certain amount of time, right? Oh, they allocate like a couple of credits. So there's a limitation, but it's all probably $25 per month. It's all affordable. So I do see that in the future, it's more your taste, right?
Yeah.
Because I saw a lot of YouTuber. The one that has a very strong foundation already did a really good job. One, they can finish one game within a couple of days. And I was amazed by how productive that is, even though you can see a lot of game mechanics. It's not like that original. It's more like shooting game, but you can see the level design. It's just like a wow, so professional and within a really short amount of time. So I can see the AI really accelerate the film and also for all the game or VR, those types of industry. However, you see like right now, a lot of college students, right? Like the AI usage. For example, right now, I'm AI fellow at Chancellor's office. So right now, we are trying to kind of push AI into the classroom. What do you see that, for example, like a film, game, VR game, or any game, digital media, these types of field? What do you see, like for example, for teachers or in the education field? How can teachers implement or student utilize AI to help them to grow? Because as far as I know, probably more than 60% of higher education teachers are against AI, and there's like a no AI policy. But it's interesting that I know where they come from. They say, oh, critical thinking. They want everybody to learn the hard way, right? So you can grow yourself, like get you suffer, right? But at some point, for example, when student graduate, I remember because I also have a startup. I remember a couple of my students came to my startup and kind of like just volunteer, just learn. They just first day they tell me that, hey, I have no AI policy. I don't use AI. And I was like, sorry, this place is not for you because we do use AI and everybody use AI. If you don't use it, you couldn't really keep up. So what do you see these types of AI in education field?
You know, I think AI has some really powerful applications in a lot of industries, and I agree that education should be one of them. I would think that um, I think it's naive to think that there's no AI. It reminds me of like when I was growing up, and calculators became, were a thing, and you couldn't use a calculator, and it's like, well, nowadays you would just assume that someone knows how to use a calculator, and you wouldn't. It felt artificial, right? To say you can't use this because this is a reality. I feel the same with AI. I think the key is in similar to media literacy. It's really important for students to understand, to have a sense of AI literacy, like um and even ethics around AI. But I think the goal is to get them more informed and to be able to develop critical thinking skills that leverage the AI. That the AI is not replacing critical thinking development, but rather is augmenting it. And then the other thing I do think is that um, AI can help personalize learning experiences. And that's something that in the same way that I was talking about, like, there are things with bringing evolving stories living that couldn't be done without AI. I think that there's a level of personalization of education that will really deepen the impact for individual students. And that's really not possible without AI also, because it's just, we don't have the resources, we don't have the bandwidth, et cetera. So that's the kind of stuff I'm excited about in terms of application of AI to education and other industries as well.
Yeah, so I do think, yeah, I think, for example, like a lot of teacher, as far as I know, maybe assessment, right? You don't allow students because, sometimes the assessment, like coding, right? You want student at least know what's going on instead of text prompt and mess up the entire thing. So maybe those types of, exam, maybe no AI, but when you study, you can have AI, right? You don't fully
Yeah.
forbidden, but at some point, for example, like one of my final for my course is that turn literature into a Unity game. Public domain literature into a Unity game because I wanna encourage students to read. Yeah, I know nobody reads, even though I remember there was an article talks about even in Columbus, those like Ivy League, like MIT, those types of like Ivy League university students report that they haven't read a book from cover to back. So it's like, yeah, right now the tools, right? Because I don't want students to just like, oh, I want to create a Unity game, Romeo and Juliet, and without student knowing what's really about that, and they just take prompt and take whatever ChatGPT
Yeah.
tell them and just start putting. They 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 need to start building their taste, and that thing cannot be replaced by you are just a empty vessel and just
Yeah.
keep typing and whatever AI give to you, you just throw it to your assignment, right? So I do think that, for example, like really get into the book. So I do think that there are something maybe no like still allow students to use AI, but maybe ask more deeper questions, or at least you need to know the context before you work with AI. Otherwise, AI will drag you to here and there, and you just got drifted. And at the end, Yeah, I remember one of my students create, I don't know, Romeo and Juliet, but one of the draft was a Monopoly game. And I was like, Monopoly games, like a setup is very different from Romeo and Juliet. I don't know, like at the end it becomes like a Monopoly game. And I said, I think there's a types of sense of, the taste that students need to learn before they kind of like fully, using AI. Because what if, they just, whatever ChatGPT, maybe they ask the wrong question and at the end,
Yeah.
nothing looks the same. So, yeah, so I do think that AI is a very powerful tool. And don't let the tool to slave you. You need to
Yeah.
harness that super intelligent, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah. So what do you see that, for example, like smart AR glass? Because right now we know that XReal, right? Project Aura is about to launch, and also Snap Spect is about to launch as well. And Orion from Meta, right, is about to launch. And what do you see like a VR? Because a lot of people just said that, for example, in education, VR is not really accessible for a lot of people because there's no headset. Even though they heard a lot of good things about VR, but no, I did the survey for 35 faculties in community college. Only one faculty tried VR, and a couple of it heard of it, and the rest of it doesn't really know what's that.
Wow.
And it's in Bay Area.
That's
So that's why that's the thing about right now. And I think in August, I'm going to Skyline Community College to do some in-person VR headset training because recently they purchased some VR headset. So for me, my goal is to put headset faculties. And the game I was thinking about maybe Cubism, something that is simple and make them like it, right? Instead of,
yeah.
yeah, because it's very easy for faculty, because faculty, a lot of them in academia is more like after they graduate, right, from school, they start teaching, right, and have a very high degree, right, and they just doing the same thing over and over again. And because I think academia also, because the student, for example, like for me, I need to pass like 15 students per one enrollment for my course in order for me to run that course. Otherwise, the course will be canceled, right? There is a certain number of threshold. So whatever in the past that works, teacher tend to maintain that. Otherwise, their
Right.
course will get canceled. So I feel like this is also prevent. So that's why I keep saying same old, because whatever works, then they have to keep the same thing, like, SLO, student learning objectives, right? So it feels like and there are a lot of layers of, I don't know, administrative approval. So whatever you want to change something, right now we are talking about, it will change in a year. So the cycle of innovation is very, very slow. And especially for teacher, I feel like a lot of teachers just, it works. So I just keep doing this, right? And for new technology, they have to learn, right? And they need to have budget to purchase those. So I just feel that for this types of like advanced technology like AR, VR, it's a little harder to get into the campus. That's the thing that I recently discovered. Yeah. So what do you see those types of like AR being implemented in the future? Because AR is not that immersive as VR or as location based types of like the void experience. What do you see spatial computing and smart AR glass right now is kind of the hot topic?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see where we are 10 years from now and whether there's a single, you know, pair of glasses, so to speak, that can give you the entire spectrum, right? From fully, just no augmentation at all to 100%, which would be VR. Um, on the way to that future, if that future ever comes, obviously we're going to end up with different devices for different purposes. So we have VR. I still believe VR has really compelling applications for entertainment. I think it's a form of entertainment that you can't get in any other way, especially like in your home, for example. With the AR glasses, uh, that really underscores the importance of audio, right? Because up to this point, most of them have just been, basically audio, and the visual overlay is pretty limited, but it will get better and better. Um, and I do think that there are interesting applications for the glasses also. Once the glasses are ubiquitous, they're like everybody has them because they're the equivalent of the phone today.
Yeah.
Um, then we could do some interesting things in location-based entertainment because we can probably assume that people have glasses, or
Yeah.
you can always provide them just as we have with VR headsets. But again, I think we have to design to the strengths. What do AR glasses do really well? Well, we know they do audio really well. We know that they can overlay on the real world. Um, they're not going to transport you in the same way that VR does, but that's okay. It's just design an experience that really, leverages the fact that you have control of the audio and that you have some visual overlays. It's like um Jarvis, in Marvel, or, we've seen it in many different sort of sci-fi movies where there's that sense of an overlay of information on the real world. Those kinds of things. I think it's going to take experimentation to see what is really interesting. One of the things I've been intrigued with over many years is the idea of sort of living fashion. So this idea that a designer might design a physical garment, but they might also design an AI augmentation to that garment. And so maybe the pattern in the fabric comes to life, and it's got butterflies or whatever, and the butterflies fly around you. But it's like it's living fashion, and it's little mini story moments that, like, I just think that would be super cool. And it's something that I will continue to be interested in.
Wow. Yeah, I do agree that AR and VR are very, very different. VR is like teleport you to another different places, and then you have another life, right? Another quest, totally disconnected to your real world. But AR, it seems like a more personal assistant, right? For example, like for Project Aura, you just, busy the whole day and you forgot your key and you can ask, right? Because there's a camera can always detect where you left the key. So it becomes more personal assistant. And then with additional layer, because right now we are living in the real world, right? What's the story in the real world, right? And also for example, you just mentioned that your clothing, you're fashionable, right? Because I remember there was a company, like a metaverse clothing company that you need to kind of like use the phone and you pay and they will Photoshop like the clothing or something or putting on the AR mode. So a lot of Instagram, right, influencers, when they do some photos, they can show without really buying a lot of creative and expensive clothing. So I do see that this types of like interesting and also mini story. What's your story? Because sometimes when we see a person in the real world, I I really I think Meta right now, I don't know that's good or bad because privacy issue is also part of the concern for smart AR glass. Meta reported shows that they are start implementing everybody's headshot into the glass, which it's also a concern, like a privacy concern. But the good thing for developer is that wow, they can make LinkedIn, right? Like a name tag, right? Because sometimes you see a person, you just forget about that person's name, right?
Yeah.
In the conference. So yeah, mini story, just like you mentioned, that maybe that person can put like, oh, my life is like this, right? Or some interesting UI. So I do see those like interesting implementation, and also the privacy issue. For example, today I just listening to one of the podcasts. It talks about the military types or like the satellite company. They are documenting the entire Earth in a lifetime. So, for example, if somewhere there's a fire, right? And then they will sending those fires information directly to the kind of like a firefighter, or like some interesting related organization to help put off the fire. However, people in the podcast ask like, "Oh, what if, let's say, Putin doesn't want you to see, because you are on the sky and you have a super high resolution to see everybody from the top, right? You can pretty much." I would say sometimes we are concerning about like the glass we wear, right? But on the sky side, like the satellite side, it's already we've already been monitored. Yeah, so yeah, we are while we are debating, we didn't realize that Google Earth, or a lot of satellites, low orbit, keep 24 hours, 7 days per week monitoring our life. It's already happening. So I just think that it's interesting that maybe we are just a bag of data that people just keep taking it. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Cool. So, what's the one thing you still like to share that we haven't touched on yet?
I think there's real opportunity. We talked a lot about immersive entertainment, and obviously it's near and dear to my heart. But I do think there's a real opportunity for transmedia storytelling or transmedia story living, where you are, um, conceiving of a world, characters, and a narrative that can move across media platforms. I mean, obviously, Star Wars has done that successfully. Marvel has done that successfully. Lord of the Rings has done that. Harry Potter. But I think one of the interesting things that's going to be possible now with AI, et cetera, is more individual creators will be able to develop and implement um, transmedia strategies. And it takes a certain kind of creative, someone who is a world builder and who understands and can, basically develop different experiences that are designed to the strengths of each platform. But that's an opportunity I'm really intrigued with. I'm intrigued with how we might develop those skills for creators in colleges and schools, et cetera, and how we can, potentially mm, uh, make that kind of creative opportunity accessible and compelling in the future. So that's an area that I'm definitely interested in and looking into and very intrigued by a lot of what I'm seeing happening in the world.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you that in the future, the media will be so enriched and understand us. I think all the stuff that we see are physical in our physical world or virtual world. Everything will be put on AI, so it will know us really well. And then also the storytelling side, I would say, since the bar of creating stuff, it becomes so easy. As long as you can describe your vision, you pretty much can just keep revising it, you can make your dream come true. So I don't see that this is the time that the creator really need to seize the opportunity to keep
Yep.
creating. Yeah. So yeah. yeah, thank you so much for joining me. And that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. We release episodes weekly. If you enjoy this conversation, check out our other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Support us by giving us a follow and a 5-star rating, or subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Thank you and see you next time.